Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Morning Melodies. We're glad that you have found your way here and have chosen to join us today. We will be having today's concert coming from Calvin Dick's home, and he will be joining us as usual on violin, together with Christopher Lee on clarinet, and Claire Ewan and Scott Meek will be providing us with some piano duos. Our Pastor Emeritus Harry Heidebrecht will be treating us to another installment of stories from his life. This one is entitled Our Little Church on the Prairies. We also want to acknowledge Columbia Cabinets for their sponsorship of this event. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoy the concert.
We want to start today's concert with a delightful piece by Antonin Dvorak from his collection of 4 romantic pieces for violin and piano. And I am very pleased to collaborate today with outstanding pianist Scott Meek. The next piece I'll be performing for you is called Pagina di Album by Michele Magnani. And Michele is an Italian composer, and he's also a clarinetist. And he's a well-known composer for
for his very romantic and semi-classical pieces. This piece is also one of the his very romantic piece, and because it's very romantic, and sometimes this type of piece is used in movie OST or one of the like movie scene that that is reminding of the beautiful memories. So hopefully, when I play this piece for you, you can remind of your beautiful memories also. So I hope you enjoy.
So the piece is Autumn Leaves by Joseph Kozma. Joseph Kozma was a Hungarian Jewish composer who lived in the 1900s. He was famous as a film composer in the mid-century, and actually Autumn Leaves was written for a 1940s French film. So the variations that I wrote take Autumn Leaves and transform the music into various classical pieces. So you'll hear Autumn Leaves in the form of Tchaikovsky's First Piano Concerto, the Liebestraum No. 3 by Franz Liszt, the Blue Danube Waltz by Johann Strauss, Chopin's Revolutionary Etude, Brahms's Hungarian Dance No. 4, and finally 2 variations from Rachmaninoff's Paganini Rhapsody. So hope you enjoy.
Hello, I'll be performing a piece called Solo de Concord by Henry Rabault, and this is a French piece. And Henry was born in 1887, and he wrote this piece in 1901 for Paris Conservatory's annual clarinet exam. So technically, this is the exam piece, so it's relatively short. However, it is consists of many different components, such as slower or faster tempo, or very technique or lyrical phrases. And for those reasons, many of the competitions they require this piece as one of the requirements for the competition. And personally, I played this when I was grade 5, and then I was required to also play for the competition, and thankfully I won the competition. And this is my second time playing for you this piece. I hope you enjoy.
One of the most beautiful violin pieces in the repertoire is the centerpiece from a French opera by Jules Massenet. At the crux of the opera is this exquisite meditation that accompanies the heroine Thais as she wrestles with the implications of turning to faith. Next, we would like to perform Mozart's Kegelstadt Trio. The German word Kegelstadt means a place where skittles are played, a game similar to bowling. Apparently, there is some evidence that Mozart may have composed this piece while bowling. Perhaps more importantly, this piece is full of joy. While Mozart experienced many setbacks and disappointments in life, he did not permit himself to dwell on his problems, but instead focused on joy and beauty. It reminds me of the verse in Philippians 4:8, which says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things."
Our story is entitled, Our Little Church on the Prairie. There's an old, rather sentimental song we once loved to sing. "O come to the church in the wildwood, O come to the church in the vale. No place is as dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the dale." Only in our case, it was a little white church, and our wildwood consisted of prairie grass and poplars. Our little church in the vale stood nestled in the Knee Creek Valley, a mile west of the hamlet of Linden, Alberta. My story is an abbreviated version of a much larger one. Jesus said, "I will build my church." When we work with Jesus building his church, it becomes a sacred task, and the result is nothing less than a miracle. We begin our story at a railway station in southern Russia on September 26, 1925. A contingent of over 1,000 Russian Mennonites boarded crudely outfitted boxcars to begin their journey to a new homeland. 3 weeks later, they arrived by ship in Quebec City, their port of entry to Canada. Here, passengers were transferred to coaches, and the long refugee train began its journey westward. Beginning in Ontario, coaches were detached at various centers along the way, where families and relatives already in Canada eagerly awaited their arrival. After the train's last stop in Saskatchewan, with only one coach remaining, the remaining passengers were asked, "Where are you going?" They replied, "Wherever you take us." Finally, the train arrived in the small prairie town of Acme, Alberta, on October 26, 1925. With no families or relatives to greet them, the members of the Church of God in Christ Mennonite Church arrived in their Model T Fords to welcome these newcomers to Canada. Families were allocated to various homes in their church community. The harvest in 1925 was late, so most found immediate employment helping with the harvest. The Church of God in Christ Mennonites, also known as Holdeman, became a significant part of our story. They also traced their roots back to Russia, where they had been part of a conservative breakaway group given the name Kleingemeinde, the small church, in contrast to the larger Mennonite church. Beginning in 1874, many of them emigrated to U.S. and Canada, settling in parts of Kansas, Nebraska, and southern Manitoba. A revivalist preacher from Ohio named John Holdeman began working among these Russian Mennonites and became the founder of a group of believers often named after him. His sermons stressed the need for conversion and living separated lives. His followers were recognizable by the beards men grew and the head coverings women wore when they became part of the church. By the turn of the century, many began looking for new agricultural lands and opportunities and set their sights on the Northwest Territories of Canada, which then included all the land west and north of Manitoba. Beginning in 1902, many homesteaded in the region we now know as Linden, Alberta. Not only were the Holdeman there to receive this new wave of Russian Mennonites, but indirectly they also contributed to the future growth and diversity of this fledgling Mennonite church. Those arriving on the last coach included Nikolai and Katharina Rempel and their 5 children. They were Mennonite brethren from the village of Marienthal in the Mlochna colony of Russia. With the outbreak of World War I, Nikolai had refused military service, but enlisted as a medic on hospital trains, bringing wounded soldiers from the war zone. During 3 years of service, he also honed his skills as a knockadoctor, a bone setter, which in the future would benefit the larger community a great deal. He emerged as the spiritual leader of the group, and in 1926 was chosen to lead this new congregation. Also on board the same train were my parents, Peter and Elizabeth Heidebrecht, and their 2 children. My parents were kirchlich, meaning from the Mennonite church. In contrast to Nikolai Rempel, my father had been a soldier, first in the Selbstschutz, the self-defense, and then in the White Army. He was hospitalized with typhus in the city of Kherson on the west side of the Dnieper River when the city was overrun by the Red Army. Unable to find an escape route over the Dnieper River, his survival instincts took over, and he signed up as a medic in the Red Army. When he received orders to report for active duty in the city of Kiev, he was mistakenly assigned to barracks occupied by a remnant of followers of the anarchist Mokhnov. When the government rounded these people up and exiled them to Siberia, my father was among them. For the winter, they quartered in unheated barracks in the distant Siberian city of Krasnoyarsk. In the spring of 1921, my father managed to obtain his release and began the long journey back to Mariupol, where his parents now lived. He had not seen his family in 4 years, nor did they know if he was dead or alive. When he arrived, his sister wrote, "He was a skeleton in rags, walking with a stick. They scarcely recognized him." After recuperating, he renewed his acquaintance with Elizabeth Dirks, and they were married during the famine on May 12, 1922. Although they participated in the gatherings of this newly formed congregation, they did not become members. The first church gathered in a hall above the general store in the village of Sunnyslope, Alberta. Then a while later, they met in the local Antler School. As in the book of Acts, conversions were a significant part of the church's story. 2 such stories are retold in the publication, Our Story, A History of Linden. In 1928, Cornelius W. Taves, a prominent farmer businessman in the area who had lived there since 1904, embraced the Christian faith and became a member of the church. In 1929, Samuel and Marie Ratzlaff, of Holdeman background, accepted God's provision for their lives through the witness of a Russian Mennonite. Others of similar background, with names such as Megley, Ratzlaff, and Eitzen, soon followed. In the year 1929, Jacob Schultz, an evangelist from Dalmeny, Saskatchewan, came to the Antler School for a week of services. On the second night, my father surrendered completely to the Lord. The next night, he stayed home with the children while my mother attended, and she also recommitted her life to the Lord. Others responded as well, and baptisms followed. Immigrants continued to arrive in smaller numbers, Among them, Mennonites from Poland. Bernard and Minna Ratzlaff became part of the church in 1929, as did Richard and Martha Ratzlaff, the parents of Harold Ratzlaff of Bakerview, in 1931. The Linden Church was unaffiliated until 1933, when the church became a member of the Saskatchewan branch of the Evangelical Mennonite Brethren Church. They remained with the EMB Conference until 1948, when the church became a member of the Mennonite Brethren Conference. In 1933, they also purchased a parcel of land from the CPR. A church building was located. It had been a vacant restaurant in the town of Acme. And using a steam-driven case tractor, they moved it to the new site. It was refurbished to become a house of worship. My father volunteered to serve as the caretaker, as his contribution to the ministry of the church. On Saturdays, he would take the older siblings along. They would walk 1.5 miles to clean and ready the facility for Sunday services. In 1938, the church granted him permission to move a small 3-room house to the southern tip of the property. This became our little house on the prairie. It's also where I was born, December 23, 1938. The year 1944 brought significant change to the Linden Church. The founding pastor, Nikolai Rempel, resigned in order to move to BC. Both the mayor of Three Hills and the president of the Board of Trade wrote letters to encourage him to reconsider. "You have gained a reputation as a bone specialist," they said, "which is of considerable worth to our community." But he could not be dissuaded. Samuel Ratzlaff was chosen to be the new leader of the church. Art Lutke, the son-in-law to the evangelist Jacob Schultz, a grad of Prairie Bible Institute and a local school teacher, was chosen to be the pastor. This is also when the church transitioned from German to English, seemingly without controversy. Art and Josephine Lutke moved into a house next to the church and also became our neighbors. For a child of 8, the influence of the church predates memory. Early memories are also hard to date. Memories such as Christmas Eve services, baptisms in the Nihil Creek, church picnics at Keever's Lake, friends and family visits often survive, even without a date attached. Vivid memories of people, especially of those who treated us with kindness, are not easily forgotten. Some of the people resurfaced later on in my life when I was a pastor, and I became a pastor to some of them. It was considered a great privilege. But perhaps the most vivid memories are those of tragedy and difficulty, like those we experienced in 1946. In January of that year, my father was seriously injured when his loaded hayrack was rear-ended by a speeding car. He was seriously injured and unable to work, but the church was generous in its support. It was also the year of my brother Victor's sudden passing, December 17th, 1946. The church was there to comfort us when we needed it most. This was also our last full year living in Linden. Our departure from Linden happened somewhat unexpectedly. I was 8 years old at the time. My father was hired to be the caretaker of the large Coaldale MB church. My parents and 2 younger siblings moved ahead of us, while we stayed, 4 of us siblings, to finish the school year. They returned at the end of June for a combined farewell and 25th wedding anniversary. The next week, we loaded all our possessions, including chickens, a pig, and 2 cows, to the back of a truck owned by Richard Ratzlaff, the father of Harold, Eric, George, and Betty. Our family, in a Model A Ford, drove in convoy with the truckload of our possessions, and we made our way to the town of Coaldale, Alberta, our future home. As a child, I did not anticipate the culture shock of that move. I would discover that the Russian Mennonite traditions were still deeply ingrained, and that German was the exclusive language of Sunday school and worship. But as a footnote to this story, Richard Ratzlaff accepted a pig as payment for moving us. He raised the pig, sold it, and sent the proceeds to my parents as a gift. Perhaps these memories and many more help explain the choice of my song. For no place is as dear to my childhood as the little white church in the Vale.
We hope that you enjoyed the concert this morning. Thank you so much to Calvin, to Christopher, Scott, and Claire for blessing us with your gifts of music, and Pastor Harry for providing us with another lovely story from your life. Want to also thank again Columbia Cabinets for sponsoring this event. We are grateful for your support. Thank you for joining us.